Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am the Maize Man. Before we get started, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, share this with all your friends in social media land, all that. Today we are talking changes on the Michigan coaching staff, including one coach who said he would stay but now has changed his mind, all that, and of course, first things first, let's get the bad news out of the way. Michigan secondary coach Steve Clink, former Michigan secondary coach Steve Clink now, and co-defensive coordinator, has decided that he will indeed leave the Michigan football program for the NFL, and more specifically for the Los Angeles Chargers, joining former head coach Jim Harbaugh and a slew of former other Michigan staffers on the Los Angeles Chargers, which I am effectively calling now Michigan West. So that is the case. That you may remember a couple days ago, Steve Clink came, informed the players that he would be staying.
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
Of course, today he told a different story and informed the players that he would be taking his talents to SoCal, basically Southern California, and the Chargers. So what does this mean exactly in the immediate space for the Wolverines? What it really means is this: head coach Sherrone Moore has to now put on his recruiting hat and recruit his rear end off for the players on his current team. The Will Johnsons, Rod Moores, Makari Pages, Jair Hills, all of these guys that Clink had, and other than Rod Moore and Makari Page, but the younger guys, the Keon Saps, Steve Clink played a huge role in getting those guys to Michigan. He played a huge role in developing all of those guys. So now Sherrone Moore has to let them know why they need to stay here at Michigan, what he plans to do. Of course, he hired a defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, which I think is the catalyst, what a lot of people are thinking is the catalyst for Steve Clink moving on. Steve Clink was the co-defensive coordinator last season with Jesse Minter. When Minter moved on, it would make sense if you were going, just in rank and file for Steve Clink to move up and take that spot. I don't think he felt wanted or needed or appreciated and decided to move on, especially when you look across to the offensive side and the quarterback coach Kirk Campbell was given that promotion and made offensive coordinator. The tight end coach Grant Newsome was given that promotion and made the offensive line coach. The guys on the offensive side seem to have made progressions, including the now head coach Sherrone Moore, from offensive coordinator to head coach. Before that, the offensive line coach to the co-offensive coordinator to the offensive coordinator, and now the head coach. So progression seemed to have been Michigan's thing, and for Steve Clink, he did not see that for himself, and so he decided to move on. Let me know in the comment section what you think about this loss for Michigan. Do you think it's significant? Let us know in the comment section. Let's talk about it. For me personally, other than Sherrone Moore having now to put on his recruiting hat for the defensive side of the ball for his own players, it also means a new secondary coach needs to be announced quickly. There has been some murmurs of Mike Mickens, who has the same title with Notre Dame. I think that would be a good look, but even if he has to, go back to the NFL, that needs to be done, and it needs to be done quickly because these guys need to know who their position coach is going to be. Not only that, that person needs to get on the recruiting trail. And when I say get on the recruiting trail, I mean specifically in the recruitment of DJ Pickett and Alex Graham. Those guys, of course, guys that Michigan had crystal balls for, like Deloach and Elijah Dotson, both of whom I've interviewed right here on the Maize Madman channel. those guys may be looking elsewhere now, maybe don't appreciate what happened with Clink scale. So we will see what happens. But 5-star DJ Pickett should be at the top of that list. 4-star Alex Graham and 4-star Ohio recruit actually should Dwayne Galloway should also be at the top of the list, along with Deloach and Dotson, of course. We move on, though. Before we move on, by the way, drop your comments in the comment section. Let me know what you think of Mike Mickens, or if you have suggestions for any secondary coach that Michigan should go after, drop them in the comment section. Let's talk about it. Also, I mentioned that Michigan hired a defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale. That, of course, is the case. Wink Martindale from the NFL does have experience in that Ravens defensive scheme, and he was just recently hired. My thing about Wink Martindale is what I fear the most is the recruiting portion of it. Wink is an older gentleman. I'm not sure if he has the chops for recruiting, if you will. And I bring that up because you look at other people like Matt Weiss, the former offensive coordinator, who had a problem with recruiting, really. He didn't have the chops for recruiting. You look at other places that Michigan has struggled in terms of recruiting, and it seems to be, and I don't want to, just put this kind of hat on Wink Martindale, but even before Jesse Minter, Mike McDonald had, what recruiting wasn't his strong suit. So these guys who come from the NFL aren't used to, hitting the road and making these calls and being in these players' houses and visiting high schools and those sorts of things, camps. It is a huge difference for those guys coming from the NFL. And my hope is that Wink Martindale picks it up quickly, that they hire a defensive staff, because now there are no original Michigan staffers from last year's national championship team on the defensive side anyway. Now the Clink scale has moved on. Jesse Minter has moved on. The strength and conditioning coach, Ben Herbert, has moved on. The defensive line coach, Mike Elston, has moved on. So the cupboards are really bare right now in terms of Michigan staff on the defensive side. Hopefully Wink Martindale has some suggestions of his own to bring in, maybe some young, fresh talent that is willing and able to go out and recruit, because that is going to be the main thing. Sharon Moore has already indicated that recruiting and NIL is going to be huge in his tenure, which I think is kind of the right way to look at this thing and to the right direction to go now. But we'll see what happens with Wink Martindale. Of course, as I said, he does have NFL experience. I do think his hiring was the catalyst for somebody like Steve Clinkscale to move on. But, Steve Clinkscale also told the players 2 days ago that he wouldn't do something like this. And then
the lie detector determined that was a lie.
He moved on. Wink Martindale, of course, former New York Giant and Baltimore Ravens defensive coordinator. So as I said, he has some experience in that Ravens sort of system. So we'll see what happens. We move on, though. Michigan wasn't done anyway hiring with Martindale. Of course, they also hired Sean McGee, the former Chicago Bears chief of staff. It was hired in Michigan's new position in the front office, if you will, of general manager, which will see him take on a plethora of job duties, including identifying talent, identifying players in the transfer portal, working with NIL and trying to raise money for NIL, those sorts of things. So this is a huge hire as well. Former NFL guy again. So Sharon Moore really tapping into the NFL. He really created this position when he was hired, because he can see, foreseeing the future basically with NIL and the transfer portal and recruiting players, right? And that's been one of the things that have been a knock on Michigan the last 3 years, even with the success they've had on the field, not bringing in, top 5, top 7, top 10 recruiting classes is one of the only knocks really that you can have on Michigan over this last 3-year or so stretch. And that's kind of huge. And I think that hiring somebody like McGee really will help in that position moving forward to help Michigan with recruiting. So there you have it. McGee is very close with Michigan head coach Sharon Moore. They have a very good relationship, and Moore kind of had his eyes on McGee when this position was created to begin with. So having him in the position is kind of the fruition of Sharon Moore's idea. So hopefully this helps Michigan, like I said, moving forward in recruiting. Also, to retain players that they already have, because Michigan has only lost a couple players to the transfer portal since Jim Harbaugh's departure. But now with Steve Clinkscale, I'm sure that there are going to be players that need to be talked off the edge. And even if they weren't necessarily thinking about hitting the portal, just to reassure them that, Michigan is heading in the right direction in terms of the next hire and all of those things. This should help in that capacity. Let me know in the comment section what you think of the Sean McGee hire as we move on. The last staffer as of the recording of this video that was hired by Michigan was former Michigan staffer Steve Kasula. He was the offensive coordinator for UMass under Don Brown for the last few years. He was hired by Sharon Moore to be the next tight end coach. Kasula, who's been an offensive coordinator, quarterback coach for Don Brown and the Minutemen. He's also was the offensive coordinator for Division II Ferris State back in 2017 and 18. And Ferris State, of course, a powerhouse in Division II. But this was, I think, a great hire by Sharon Moore. Of course, Grant Newsome moved up from tight end coach, where he did an outstanding job there, to now being the offensive line coach, where the bar is set even higher from, what Sharon Moore was able to do in that same position. So on the offensive side, I actually think Michigan's continuity is very good in terms of the coaching hires, in terms of the players that are coming back, the players that they recruited, especially along the offensive line and running back. So I think offensively, for the first time in probably the last 4 or 5 years, Michigan is in a better spot continuity-wise than even on the defensive side. Of course, the defensive side, I think Michigan has better players. Let me say that. They have a better defense if everybody comes back, if everybody stays now that, these coaching changes have been made, now that coaches have left. If they bring everybody on the defense back, I still think that's the better unit with Will Johnson, Keon Sapp, Makari Page, Rod Moore, and then, of course, Graham and Grant on that offensive line. So I think that's the better unit. And I can't forget about Josiah Stewart. They brought in Barham. They brought in, Hausman is coming back. So that unit is, in terms of talent, the better unit. But I think the continuity on the offensive side is better based on the hires that Sharon Moore has made and the promotions that Sharon Moore has made. Let me know in the comment section what you think about that. Some of the players that Michigan is recruiting have already spoke out. Guys like Elijah Dotson said, wow, when Steve Clinkscale moved on to the Los Angeles Chargers. Dwayne Galloway, I spoke about him. We still have an interview to set up with him. He says that it was a surprise that Steve Clinkscale moved on. He wishes him the best and is looking forward to building a relationship with whoever Michigan hires in his stead, if you will, whoever the secondary coach will be going forward. I do think Michigan should try their hardest to get Mike Mickens, but we'll see what happens. Let's talk about it in the comment section. That's just a couple players and what they thought. Next time, we'll talk about some recruits and where Michigan stands with a bunch of 2025 recruits and all of that. Until next time, though, stay angry, my friends. Before I get out of here, I got to remind you guys of this. I have partnered with Mint Mobile. It's a very, very cheap alternative to your current mobile phone plans. $15 a month right now gets you unlimited service and data. You can't really beat that, and it's so cheap because Mint Mobile doesn't have the same overhead as an AT&T, as a Verizon or T-Mobile, anybody else, and they're using the same towers as T-Mobile, so you will have service. I do have the link in the description of this video. Make sure you check that link. Get you a $15 phone plan for unlimited data. You cannot beat it. Use my code, of course, Maize Madman. Till next time, stay angry, my friends. I'm upset.
Ladies and gentlemen, this might be our best season ever. My ratings, they're about to go through the roof.
All right, now I'ma calm down. So I'ma calm down, son. I just don't get that all that Mace and that lock and all that. I just don't get it, son,
Okay,
for real.
just calm
And how the